She believed no one saw her kneel on the warm concrete that afternoon, hands shaking as she pressed her forehead to the sunlit wall of the abandoned shopping complex, trying to quiet the storm breaking inside her chest. Cars passed. People laughed somewhere nearby. Life continued loudly and brightly, while she unraveled in silence, convinced the world had already decided she didn't matter. What she didn't know was that high above, behind mirrored glass reflecting the blue daytime sky, a man who had everything was watching every single moment. If you believe kindness deserves second chances, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Threads of Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Her name was Alara Quinn, and by early afternoon the sun had already burned away any illusion that the day would be gentle. She was 24, exhausted beyond her years, wearing a faded blue dress that had once been neat but now carried the marks of sleepless nights and quiet despair. Alara had grown up learning how to disappear, how to shrink herself so others wouldn't notice the bruises life left behind. Her mother had passed when she was 16, her father vanished long before that, and the foster system taught her quickly that hope was a luxury few could afford. She worked 2 jobs until both disappeared in the same month, victims of cuts and closures that never spared people like her. Rent piled up. Eviction notices followed. That afternoon, the final letter sat folded in her bag like a verdict. She had come to the empty complex because it was one of the few places where she could cry without being told to be strong or to smile. The concrete was warm under her palms, the sunlight harsh but honest, and for once she let herself feel everything. Fear. Shame. The aching question of whether surviving was enough if no one cared that you were still here. She believed she was invisible, just another struggling figure blending into the cracks of a city that had learned to look away. Across the street stood a sleek glass building housing one of the city's most successful investment firms. Inside, on the top floor, sat Rowan Hale, a self-made millionaire known for his sharp instincts and controlled demeanor. His life was measured in numbers, forecasts, and victories that made headlines but never filled the quiet spaces of his soul. That afternoon, he had stepped away from his desk, eyes drifting downward as they often did when his mind felt heavier than usual. That was when he saw her. Not as a blur or background noise, but as a human being breaking in plain daylight. Rowan didn't know why he couldn't look away. Maybe it was the way her shoulders trembled under the open sky, or the fact that she wasn't hiding her pain in darkness. She was grieving openly in the middle of the day, daring the world to notice. Something inside him shifted. He had lost his younger sister years ago to a life that overwhelmed her before anyone stepped in. Watching Alara felt like witnessing a moment he had failed to save once before. Down below, Alara wiped her face, forcing herself to stand. She straightened her dress, lifted her chin, and took a breath that felt heavier than it should. The sun illuminated her face, revealing not weakness but resilience carved by struggle. She didn't know that with every step she took away from that wall, someone was already deciding her story didn't end there. What followed wasn't instant rescue or dramatic gestures, but something quieter and more powerful. Rowan made calls, not to control, but to understand. He learned her name, her situation, her history, all without her knowing. He arranged help not as charity, but as opportunity. A temporary apartment owned by one of his companies. A position at a nonprofit he quietly funded, designed to support people rebuilding their lives. He stayed unseen, believing dignity mattered more than recognition. When Alara received the offer later that same afternoon, standing in a sunlit cafe with dust motes floating through the air, she thought it was a mistake. But as details unfolded, hope returned cautiously, like a fragile flame protected from the wind. She didn't know who had been watching. She only knew that for the first time, someone had seen her struggle and responded with compassion instead of judgment. Days turned into weeks. Alara worked, learned, healed. She laughed again under daylight skies. She walked with purpose. And sometimes, when the sun reflected off glass buildings downtown, she felt an unexplainable warmth, as if the universe itself had decided she was worth saving. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement tells us these stories matter. Before the ending, we have a special request. Comment the word "seen" if you believe no one is ever truly invisible. Alara never met Rowan Hale, and Rowan never needed thanks. But on a bright afternoon, 2 lives changed forever, simply because one person chose to truly see another in the light of day.